And we are live. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Odum and Andrea show. This is a podcast where my beautiful wife and I sit down and discuss a book that she's read about someone who's done something really cool, really interesting, inspiring, what have you. And we just talk about it and see if there's anything that we've learned in there, or that Andrea's learned in there, that we might want to incorporate into our lives. Is we strive to be the best people that we can possibly be,
Indeed.
which is kind of, I don't know, we like it, I guess.
Yeah.
And today we're reading. Actually, we don't have the book in front of us because it was a library borrow, and then we just kind of lost it. Well, not lost it. I had to return it. So, what is it?
We are going to be talking today about "In Order to Live: A North Korean Girl's Journey to Freedom" by Yeonmi Park.
Oh, right. So she's the one that I guess defected from North Korea, or defected or escaped. I guess might be the better word.
Would be the better word.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because she was on a few. I don't know. She's been around quite a bit, giving like speeches and whatever. And I think she's been talking a lot about, I guess, things that she's seeing in our culture today that are like, oh, this is kind of why are we going towards the North Korean model of government? Because it's not quite good for the people.
Yeah. So this one might get a little political.
Okay. Well, whatever. We'll try to be as neutral as possible because I don't want to get too whatever.
Of course,
but
we're gonna
just talk about things and
out some
just like
interesting things.
and just listen to it. And, I mean, it's always good to be aware of what's going on in your own country, and if there's things that you personally think that aren't good, then maybe you should do something about it. What that means is just get involved with politics or whatever and start at the local level or something like that. I have no idea. I don't know. So if you like our stuff, check us out, odumandandrea.com. We got lots of podcasts on there. I think this is number 33. I don't know what it is. Yeah. So still going strong, still loving it.
I like your poppy.
Oh, I like your poppy.
I like my poppy.
Yeah. Oh, it's nice. It's nice. Remember Day is coming up, so always good to remember.
Yep.
Some anyways, I don't get into that history. But yeah, well, maybe it's kind of fitting, I guess, in a sense that
That's what I was going to say. It is kind of fitting.
So many people have done so much and fought and died for our freedoms that we have today that, I think maybe some people just take for granted, not in a malicious way, but just, you just forget.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I know us growing up, learning about the world wars and things that Canada have done since Confederation and even before and all that, like there's so much that has been done to get us to where we are today.
Yeah.
And things, you look at other countries around the world, like things are fragile where they can go really bad, really fast. So it's always good to remember what people have done so that, history is not doomed to repeat itself, right? But
for me, both my grandfathers were vets in the war, and so it's always been a really important thing to me to remember, especially their sacrifice. I mean, they didn't obviously die, but I mean, geez, they saw some shit, I'm sure. So,
absolutely. You want nobody to ever have to live through that kind of thing, but with that, let's go. Sorry, what's the name of the book again?
In Order to Live.
In Order to Live. All right, so take it away.
So let's just do a little bit of background on North Korea, because I actually didn't really know, how did North Korea even kind of become how it is today? And so Kim Il-sung came into power after World War II. And so he was propped up by the Russian government because it was communist. And then there was the Korean War, which fractured North Korea and South Korea. And so
before then it was just one country.
Yes.
Okay.
And so North Korea, obviously communism, South Korea supported by the United States, democracy. So then what happened was, once he came into power, he ordered background checks on every single citizen, and this went back generations. And so then you were ranked based on your loyalty to the regime. And so there's many different classes of people. And so basically it's like a caste system there. So if you were a landowner, because obviously with communism, they take away everything and it's the state that owns everything. You okay over there?
Yeah, no, sorry. Go ahead.
The land was taken away. But if you previously had been a landowner, you the lowest class. If you were a landowner.
Really?
Yes.
Because they want you to give away your land so that you can get better status?
Well, you didn't have a choice. Your land was taken away from you because everything's owned by the state. And so that was, if you were a landowner, you were considered like hostile.
Right.
There was other people, and then not only the landowners, but like the descendants of the landowner. So this stink stuck to your family forever. You can't move up. You can only move down. So if you marry someone with like a higher class, they come down to what your level is.
Oh, really? And even the kids?
Even the kids.
So then
especially.
there's very high incentive to not do that.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's called a song bun. And so people with like a higher song bun or in a higher class, most of them live in Pyongyang, which is the capital. So if you're higher class, you're working for the government because they know that you're loyal and can be trusted for the regime. So that's just like
Isn't there, I don't know if I heard this. I don't know if this is true or where I heard this. Is that, if you look at North Korea, when you see the Earth from a satellite or whatever, and, you see the lights at nighttime or whatever, but in North Korea, it's like all black except for like 100%. One dot, and that's like the capital.
Pyongyang. Yeah, 100%. That's true. Yeah. So, and so then it's like this kind of cult of personality where it's about this family and the stories that they tell about this family. It's like they're basically like gods.
Sorry, this is the
leaders.
The leader, yeah.
Yeah, and so the first leader was, what was his name? I forget now. Sorry, I'm just going to look it up here. They don't say. So the first leader was Kim Il-sung, and then his son took over it, and now it's the grandson.
The third generation. Right.
Yeah. And so they were told like, oh, well, the dear leader, like, oh, he's sacrificed so much to make sure you have so much, and he knows your thoughts. And so all of their songs, everything is about like venerating the dear leader, and oh, he does so much for us. And it's like, and it's really interesting to read a little bit about it and hear about it because it's like a religion. It really is. Yeah. And he's like Christ basically in this religion. It's really interesting to read about. So it's a little bit about North Korea and the type of crazy that's happening there.
It's almost crazy to imagine. I'm sure you're going to talk more about this, but how many of the citizens believe it? Because I imagine things are super heavily relegated or regulated and censored or whatever, so they have no understanding of what's going on in the outside world. And how many people just kind of just buy into it and see like, this is like, you know what I mean? Do they actually adore the leader as people that are Christians adore Christ?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, 100%. The other thing that's really interesting too is in the older generations, they were used, because they call it a socialist paradise, right? That's what they're always told, is you're living in a socialist paradise. And so the older generation, when like right after World War II, for them it was like they were all fed and everyone had enough like food, healthcare, like everything. Like it was actually not too bad apparently. But then Russia no longer supported them, and so then their crops failed. They had no fertilizer, and so then there was this extreme famine where millions and millions of people died.
Yep.
So now for the next generations, it's hell for them. So, but the older generations remember those kind of good times. So that even part of it was like really interesting. So yeah. So she's born in 1993, and she lives in North Korea in a little town called Hyesan, and it's on the Yalu River. Y-A-L-U, not yellow, but Yalu. And so it borders China. Like that's how north it is it? That river is kind of like the border to China.
Yep.
So even from a really young age, her mom said to her, like, watch your mouth, because even the birds and mice can hear you whisper. So you can't say anything against anything. She had a lot like against the dear leader and the regime.
Right.
They had like a cousin or like a uncle or something that came over from China back when things were a bit more permissive, and he said something derogatory against the leader, and the government, it got out because they tell on each other.
Right.
And so the government officials came, investigated their family, and they're like, no, like we don't agree with what he said. Like he's just come from China, but it was this whole big thing. Right. So somehow it gets out, whatever. Right. So Yeah, and so she was growing up believing that he's immortal. He goes like the leader, Kim Jong-il is immortal. He can read my mind, like all of these things. So she has a sister and then a father and a mother. That's their family unit. So her dad is kind of like an entrepreneur, and so they couldn't make a lot of money. So he would do like a lot of like black market selling of things kind of thing. So he would travel back and forth to Pyongyang to sell. It was like kind of like metals and stuff like that. And so he had some kind of like contacts where he was able to get the metal and then sell it. So he kind of like a wheeler dealer.
And like sell it to who? And this is the thing too. In this type of really strict socialist, communist, whatever societal structure, what are you even allowed to do? Like, how are you even allowed to be an entrepreneur?
You can't. It was all underground, but it was the point where people were so desperate at this point that they would buy and sell through this little black market type thing that was happening.
How do the people have jobs? Do most people not have jobs, or is every
you're told what to do?
Every single, and it might not even be a job. It might just be, this is just what you have to do for the state.
Yep. And so
and then we'll give you what you need, right? As that's what socialism is. It's like, well, the government will just provide for you. Everything will be happy, right?
And not only that, like her mom wanted to go to med school, but because her songbun was so low,
she wasn't in the right class.
She wasn't allowed to go. She had to go. They told her, you have to do organic chemistry. That's what she had to do. It even tells you where you have to live. Like I was saying with Pyongyang, but they had to live. At one point they moved to another place because her parents kind of separated at one point, and so her mother moved away, and she had to move back. They told her, well, you have to move back to this town. You're not allowed to live over here.
Right.
So it's so controlled.
Do they pay for their shelter? Like, how does that work?
I don't know. She didn't get too into
Sure.
it. So, but there comes a point where things are so bad in North Korea that they do eventually allow like little marketplaces to happen, like legal ones. But this is devastating though for her dad's business that was all underground, right?
Right. Because now there's a place where people can buy things legally.
Yeah, exactly.
Not have to worry. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but they would have, like, every once in a while, they would kind of get in like smuggled like VHS tapes from like China of different like Chinese shows or South Korean shows.
Right.
She even got Titanic at one point.
Right.
And so
it's amazing everything that we take for granted
100%
is luxurious to so many people around the world and other places.
Yeah. The level of poverty is shocking. And for them, actually, they were kind of more well off than most people. She describes seeing people, like she talks about this in the springtime was actually like the worst because they're coming out of a hard winter and they're at the end of their food, but there's no new food that's being grown.
Yeah, it's going to take a little while.
And so she was talking about going into the fields and eating grasshoppers.
Yeah.
She describes this one point.
That's a World Economic Forum type stuff there. Eat your bugs.
Fuck. And so she even describes one point of seeing like this man, like they have to go down and get water. Because there's no running water in their house. They have to go down and get water. And she sees this man and he's dying. And as he's still alive, his entrails are coming out and dogs are eating him. Like, it's horrific. And this is just normal. That's just a normal day in her village. So, and so she says, so they're watching these beautiful movies like Titanic and stuff, and they're like, oh my gosh, like how is this like, and it's like a love story and all these stuff, and they don't even have a concept of what love is outside of the love for the dear leader, right? There's not.
Well, they must have some concept because parents and
a lot of the times it's arranged, right? And so they're not even given any sex education, which will become important later. But like all of these things, it does, like there's no concept of it except for the dear leader. Like they take your entire humanity away from you right there. And so what she says though, but at the same time, they're told they live in a socialist paradise. And so she says, North Koreans have two stories running in their heads at all times. One is what you are taught to believe, that you live in a socialist paradise. The other is what you see with your own eyes. So you're seeing these dead bodies all over the place. And
this is paradise. Well, Jesus.
Yeah. And so it wasn't until she read 1984 that she found a word for this, doublethink. So I found that like really, really interesting.
Where did she read that book?
In South Korea when she gets out.
Okay, so she read, of course, because I'm sure that book might be on the ban list.
Yeah. So And even it gets to a point like her dad gets arrested at some point and her mom has to go to Pyongyang to kind of help figure it out and get her dad out of jail or whatever, labor camp or whatever it is. So she's only 8, her sister's like 10, and they're far. It's like at least like a day's travel to get to Pyongyang. And so the mom ends up leaving this 10-year-old and 8-year-old all by themselves for a month, leaving them with like just like a bag of rice to like figure it out kind of thing. So it's so...
You have to grow up fast.
Yeah, exactly. So her dad is eventually sentenced to 10 years in a prison camp.
For doing that underground, whatever he was...
all the smuggling and that sort of stuff. The time of it, she's like, it doesn't really matter how long he was sentenced to because people don't survive these camps. Like, they don't survive. They're treated like animals. And so they go and stay with her mom's brother for a couple years. And so she talks about this time. So part of it is they have to go to these like self-criticism or struggle sessions each week.
My goodness.
You have to write down what you did that week, stand up in front of the group and criticize yourself. So she says, this week I was too spoiled and not thankful enough to my benevolent dear leader's eternal and unconditional love. So you have to say shit like that. And then, they would add
this is literally out of like 1984 where they have, what was it? Those 2 minutes they stand up and they have those 2 minute or that's 2 minutes of hate, I think is what that is. But it's kind of the opposite or whatever. But
yeah.
Like,
so
oh my goodness. That is, it's
insane.
It's on another, well, I mean, how else do you completely control a population of people?
Yeah.
You just have to indoctrinate them into something that's, it's like you either use some kind of religious thing to bring them above and beyond.
Yeah.
It's like how you denigrate people to say like, oh, you're below human.
Yes.
So then you could do all kinds of horrible things to them. But then of course, if you elevate yourself to above human, then people will just unconditionally won't challenge that. And then of course, obviously controlling the narrative where you completely control the message. So your citizens don't even have access to information. It's been generations now where this is how you live and how you grow up. It's like, what are you going to question anything? Because again, if you say something, people are going to rat you out or whatever, and you're informed, and then you're gone. Like I don't know how people internally are going to be able to get themselves out of North Korea. Like what is North Korea's path to, freedom? Yeah,
people like her speaking out. That's what it is. It's defectors speaking out.
It's going to keep speaking out, and then it's going to be people on the inside learning about this. And but again, the leaders aren't going to just let this happen, right? You know what I mean? Like
of course.
Or is it going to be I again too, I also don't believe so much in like other countries just coming in and just like, oh, we're just gonna have a military and we're just gonna go in. It's like
you have to struggle for it for yourself, I think, which it's shitty. That's a shitty thing to say, but they have to want it and they have to understand. They have to, I don't know.
So many people are.
It's really tough because the indoctrination is so fundamentally deep in their minds.
Yeah. And I think we'll get to people that are up above too, that are well off too. But I heard some of the stuff where even like the top guys or whatever, even they're like killed off every once in a while just to make sure that.
Well, he killed his brother. The guy that's in power now, he killed his brother.
Really?
Yep.
Why? Well, because he wants for himself, or
yeah,
kill him before he kills me. Because I'm a little bit of Godfather kind of thing going on right there.
As soon as his dad died, he killed off a bunch of his uncles too. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. There's a ton of stuff. So, no, that one was pretty famous because they assassinated him in an airport. I forget where it was. I want to say it was Thailand.
He killed him not even in North Korea.
No, it was an airport and it was like poison or something like that. I'm pretty sure.
Walter White Risen or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah. But anyways, let's listen more of the story, I guess.
So she says they would add that they hadn't worked diligently enough to fulfill the mission that the party ordered us to do or did not study hard enough. Then you'd conclude with, since then, our dear leader has forgiven me because of his benevolent, gracious leadership. I thank him and will do better next week. And then you'd criticize each other. But what is also really similar to religion in this is it's like when you go to confession, you confess your sins.
Yep.
And then, you're supposed to say, however many Our Fathers or whatever prayers it is to like absolve yourself.
Yeah.
So it's very similar.
You're good.
Yeah, exactly. The other interesting thing is in the beginning of the day before everybody goes to work in school, everybody has to go out and clean together. They have to go clean the cities together and they have to like polish the monuments and all of this stuff. After school, the kids have to go and work in the fields and like plant or harvest or whatever it is they're doing. So there's always this collective work that's being done together.
I would really like to see. So are all the cities clean? What's the crime like? Is there a crime? I mean, you're seeing dead people all over the place, and like someone's getting eaten alive by dogs, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's not a very clean sight, I would imagine.
Well, that was in the bigger city where they lived, so I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know. But if you see pictures of Pyongyang, like, it's very clean. It's very, very clean. And from people, if you listen to Michael Malice, he's been there. He's a podcaster and a social commentator. He's been there. He's Russian himself, so he has like this pull with the North Korean people because it's so devastating there. So anyways, but he talks about even when he was there, it's all theater. So they have supermarkets, and they take them to one supermarket that's full of food, but it's the only one. Yeah. Like, it's all fake, right? Or they have this like big like banquet hall, and they come out and give these like big dinners, but it's all fake, right? That doesn't happen every day. It's just for show for the
right, because they only let so many people in, and only in certain designated areas. Exactly. Like, you can't just go strolling around just any random area.
No. So the other thing, this other story was so crazy because there was such a lack of fertilizer for the fields at this point in her life. They had to collect their poo.
Yeah, fertilizer with your own manure.
And there was a quota that each family had of how much poo the family had to collect. So you would have to make sure her aunt would say, make sure, like, poop at home, don't poop at school, someone's going to take your poo, and people would be taking your fucking poo. Like, how ridiculous is that?
Yeah.
It's so nuts.
And it's also, if you're not getting fed a lot, you're not going to be shitting a lot as well.
No.
It's
no. So eventually, her dad gets let out of jail. He bribed one of the guys, and he gets let out of jail. They move back to Hayasan, and they live in an apartment building together. It gets to a point that the winter is so awful. Things are just so untenable to live there. They understand, especially her dad and he's still so sick after being in this prison camp. They're like, we can't stay here. We have to get our girls out. We can't stay here. And especially her mother, her sister is like, because she's older by this point. I think she's like, her sister's maybe like 15, 16 by this point. And she's like, I can't, like, there's no future here for me. Like, I got to get out. So they go and try and find a broker, and the broker's like, yeah, I can get you into China, like, stay here and then I'll get you in. So on the eve that they were all supposed to go, Yeonmi has this intense, awful pain in her abdomen. They take her to the hospital and they operate and say it's appendicitis. That's because that's what they think it is. Her story of this is horrifying because socialist medicine, everything's supposedly paid for. It is not. Yep. They had to go out and buy their own anesthetic and their own antibiotics, all their own medicines to bring with them to the hospital. Yep. She didn't even have a bed after this happened to recover in. She was like on the floor. Not only that, they didn't have enough anesthetic, and so
she felt lots of it, or wasn't put out all the way. Or
she was awake for the last half of it. So not only that, there's no bathroom. She had to like go walking across, and her mom had to like nurse her like after the surgery. And not only that, so they would have to go to the bathroom and cross this like outdoor courtyard, and there was just dead bodies piled up in this courtyard. And the mother's like, what the hell is this? Like, why are these dead bodies? There's rats everywhere. Like, what the fuck's happening? And they're like, oh yeah, well, they don't come and pick up the bodies until there's like 20 of them. So we'll just leave them here until they come and pick them up. It's like,
yeah, that's the hospital.
The hell? So like unreal.
Yeah, I mean, we can have a little bit of a commentary about socialized medicine, and of course here in Canada we have socialized medicine, and for the longest time, even for me, you know, growing up was, we have the best healthcare in the world. Remember hearing that? Canada is the best healthcare in the world, best healthcare in the world, and looking at it now, you know, as a parent, and you know, when kids, you know, we don't have to go to the hospital often, but when we do have to go, you know, it's kind of a serious thing, and I could easily say that we do not have the best healthcare system in the world. I mean, it's not the worst, but it's certainly not the best. And yeah, the same thing too. It's like, you think that everything's free, but number one, nothing's free because we pay a huge amount of taxes here. And the thing is, when you want to get a service like healthcare, or any other, like you want to hire a photographer or any kind of photographer, you just pay the money and then they come do the service for you. So if you wanted to get an MRI, says, oh, I need an MRI. You could just pay for it and get, but it doesn't work that way. So they put you on a list, and you hear, how many times have you heard that someone, oh, well, I need to have some kind of surgery, looked at my knee or whatever.
Yeah.
You're on a wait list for 18 months or 24 months or something ridiculous like that. What kind of care is that, where it takes you years to get the actual care that you need in order to alleviate whatever it is that's bothering you? And you do have to pay for drugs. You have to pay for so many things. And if there's anything above and beyond whatever the bare minimum is, you have to pay for that out of pocket. And it's even when we had to have Tristan in the ambulance ride, you got to pay for the ambulance. And like there's so many things that you have to pay for. And it's like, well, what the hell are our tax dollars going to? So in theory, I mean, we don't want to get into the healthcare system. Like in theory, it would work great if the system itself was super efficient and actually would help people quickly. You know what I mean? I mean, that's the whole thing. But our system, it doesn't. Anyways, what's the solution? I can't fix healthcare system, but it's just interesting to know the differences between how quickly a socialist healthcare system can degrade if the government or whatever is not actually providing the resources it needs to function correctly. And then you get things like that. I mean, I don't think Canada will ever get to the level where we're going to the hospital and we see dead bodies all over the place. But
let's hope not.
Well, it's because they have a place to put the dead bodies, right?
Yes.
Well, that's crazy. Anyways, a little aside there, but
her sister ends up crossing before them, so she goes that
right. So
that
they still
night.
go
so
anyways.
Her sister goes on her own, right? And so
that's dangerous as well too, right? Because I hear so many things where people try to escape North Korea and they get to China, but then they get sold into slavery.
We're gonna get there.
All right. Yeah.
Her sister goes ahead of them, and they don't hear from her for many, many years. After that, they lose her. They end up going to the same broker that her sister went to, and they don't tell the dad, and they end up going across, and the dad stays back in North Korea. I'm not really sure. It's a little bit confusing how it happened, and I'm not really sure why they didn't tell the dad and why they didn't get him to come with them. He's still really sick at this point. Like, he's very of ill health, like, just like a shell of himself, basically. But they're crossing, so they have to cross this river, and it's in winter, or like early spring, and so she still like has this like incision, like she's not fully healed from this operation. It's only a couple days after this operation that they go, so she's still like,
they can hardly walk.
And
if
so
at all.
So it was March 31st in 2007 when she escaped. And what's crazy about this is she's talking about this North Korea, and you're reading like how awful it is, and you forget that this was 2007 and in the early 2000s that this was happening to her. And because it's like, you're like, this is like, you feel like this must be like 50 years ago,
right?
But the way that they
the
live
level of
there,
technology or whatever.
Because it's the same thing. They lived so close to China. They would see all those lights in China. They would see
like the skyscrapers or whatever.
They could
like,
smell the food coming, and they were like starving because they have no food there. So she's 13 at this point when they escape, just to give you an idea of what the age is. So they get across, and immediately the Chinese brokers are there. They want to rape her. And so the mom's like, no, take me instead. And so that's her first introduction into what sex is. She had no idea, and they take her mom and they rape her right away.
In front of her.
Yep. It's horrible.
I mean, not that there's any decency to rapes. Like, oh, did you do it in front or behind closed doors? That is...
She's 13. It's awful.
Yeah. So you can't even speak the level of horribleness.
No.
And just disgust.
Eventually... what the whole point of this, and yes, they're sold in basically into slavery, and that's what it is, right? They're so naive. So the broker in North Korea knows exactly what's going to happen to them, but they're so naive. They don't know anything about anything. They just want to escape their life right now, and they go across there and they're sold. So originally her mom was $65. Each time they're sold, they're more expensive. So she was originally $65. She was sold by that broker that raped her to another one for $650.
This is like US?
Mm-hmm. And then, so Yeonmi herself was sold for $260, and then
And
again,
who are
for
they being sold? Who are they
2000.
being sold to?
Brokers up the line. So eventually what happens with these brokers, and then because of China's one child policy, you have all of these single males. And so they don't have wives. And so they buy these North Korean women, and that's how they then have a wife, is because of there's not a lot of females, especially in rural China,
right,
to be married. So that's what happened. So her mom is sold, and she goes into the countryside. It's not a great situation. And so eventually Yeonmi becomes the mistress. She's 13. She becomes the mistress of this one broker, because this one broker just takes a liking to her and says, and she's like loses her. She goes all crazy when he tries to rape her. So she goes like wildcat crazy, like scratching, like not letting him near her. And so he finally says, look, if you would be my mistress, I'll get your mom back, and I'll get your dad back for you. I'll bring your dad over. But you have to help me be the broker and bring these girls over and sell them. Like, you need to help me in my business. But I'll take care of you and your mom, and we'll get your dad over here, and we'll try and find your sister.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously this is illegal in China, but it seems like the government turns kind of a blind eye to what's going on.
They do. In 2008, it was a little bit different because they did have the Beijing Olympics. So they were cracking down on North Korean defectors and sending them back. So they had to be really careful for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The thing is, too, is she talks a lot about, I think she has a little bit of shame that she agreed to this proposition, but it was she's eating actual kind of food for the first time. So she's even eggs were a huge deal to her.
Right. Yeah.
So anything, right? Toothbrushes, all of these things that we take for granted, she didn't have. And so it's luxury, even though it's
a different kind of health.
Yeah. So eventually they do find her dad, and about 6 months after they're in China, they bring her dad over. What happens is he eventually is in so much pain. They risk taking him to the hospital to find out what's wrong with him in China.
Yeah.
And because they could have called the police on them and have them returned to North Korea, but he's in so much pain, and they find out he has cancer. And so eventually he dies, and so what happens is they eventually are able to kind of break away from, his name's Hong Wei, the broker guy. He lets them go. It's a weird relationship, I think, and she has a weird she's grateful to him, but he's it's awful.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, you freed me and got me out of this place. But she treated me like a sex object or whatever,
raping
which is
her, basically, right?
But then I got to experience these things, and then you also gave me my freedom, I guess. I don't know. I'm sure
you got my dad. You got
I'm
my
sure
mom back
it's a
for
bad
me.
bundle of emotions, and
100%.
Yeah,
and she felt really bad that she had to even help him sell these North Korean women to. But it's she's as much of a slave and a prisoner as they are.
Yeah, it's funny. It reminds me. I mean, it's total off, but you know how Deep Space Nine, one of the reasons I really love that show is they go into a little bit of the dynamics between the Kardashians and the Bajorians, where the Kardashians enslaved.
Kardashians.
Did I say Kardashians?
You said Kardashians twice.
Oh my goodness.
That's awesome.
That's weird. I don't even watch those fucking shows. Those people, because I don't know anything about those people.
It's hilarious. Those people.
So what are they? Because the Cardis or the Spoonheads is what. So they're Kardashians.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Kardashians and the Bajorians. Anyways, so this race, they kind of occupied the whole planet for 60 years, and then there was people, the Bajorians, that they would say, oh well, if you were helping the Kardashians.
Collaborators.
Facilitating. They would call them collaborators, and you were just as bad as them, as what the freedom fighters would say. So it's interesting, but then you realize as the show goes on, there's so much
nuance, gray,
because you got to do what you need to do, because you're getting food for the first time. You're not being enslaved, but it's it's you don't know until you're in that situation where it's life or death, and you have to make these horrible decisions between doing something that is wrong or immoral, but at the same time it's well, if I don't do this, like I'm going to die or whatever. So, I mean, some people will choose to die, and, you know,
Yeah.
that's a choice that they can make, right?
Of
If there's a line
course.
they're not willing to cross. So,
Yeah.
anyways, isn't that we can go off a little bit on, was that Kanye West said something really controversial of like slavery being a choice.
Yeah.
And it's like, you could either be a choice. You can either become a slave or you can die. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember the movie or the book Roots.
Of course.
And there was one scene when they're talking about when they're coming back on the boat. And there's like all these people that are speaking different dialects. They're trying to like coordinate like when they were going to attack. This was kind of at the start before they were so weakened.
Yeah.
And there was one guy that he finally, I guess he himself decided to attack. You know, he took a couple guys out or whatever, and you know, of course, ended up getting killed. But Kunta Kinte, I know, was just like, you know, that guy's brave and like a soldier warrior to go out like that because he's not going to. You know, I'm not going to be a slave. I'm going to take as many people out as I can, and I'm not going to do, you know? So, anyways, very controversial topic. But again, if you're not in that situation, like these are impossible choices, right? You either become a slave or, you know, you're going to die.
Yeah.
What's it going to be?
Yeah. It's rough.
Yeah.
It's rough choices to have
like,
to make. No one should have to be making those choices.
And how many millions, maybe billions of people, like in terms of living in poverty and having basically no choice. Like it's horrible. And yeah, again, thinking about everything we have here, it's like you could almost get sick to your stomach and be like, why do we have so much when so many people have so little? And look at the shit that we're arguing about and complaining about, right? Like it's like, what?
I know.
Are you fucking kidding me? This is the issue of the day. Look at
these people are.
Oh yeah.
I know.
Anyways.
They leave from Hongwei from one city and they go to another city where they know another woman who is like, I have a job here. Come and you can work at this job. I make pretty good money.
So I imagine she's learning Chinese when she's there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She knows Chinese.
Yeah.
And so they're working in these chat rooms, and it's basically
typing chat rooms,
chat rooms, and it's mainly with South Korean men who are lonely. So it's like sex chat rooms that they're basically doing, and her and her mom are working there. They're making money though.
Right.
So they're saving up money. They eventually they find this, it's a Christian group that's helping, Chinese Christian group that's helping getting North Korean defectors out through Mongolia.
Out of China even too, because they're still kind of trapped in there.
Yeah, exactly. And so apparently at this point, Mongolia had some sort of like agreement with South Korea that any North Koreans that came, they would take them to South Korea. There was some sort of like diplomatic agreement that they had with South Korea.
Can I ask you, what do South Koreans think of North Koreans? Are they like bitter enemies? Like, do they even want to have North Koreans in their country?
Can you hold that question? Because we're going to get to there.
Right.
We're going to get there. It's an important part of her story.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I imagine they're not too friendly with each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways.
So they find this Christian group. The Christian group is like, yeah, we'll help you escape, but you have to convert to Christian and you need to learn how to pray and
of
all
course,
this stuff.
just one religion for another, right?
So
like it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and so they're like, they had no idea, of course, of what Christianity was or who Jesus was, and so she's like, oh, I know this. Like, this is familiar. She's like, okay, I can play this game.
You know, the people that instilled, you know, after World War II or whatever, was like, oh, we need to create this socialist utopia. They're not stupid. They know exactly what it takes to indoctrinate people.
Yeah,
like, this is by design.
I know.
Like, if you think that this just happened like organically, it's like, no, this is methodical in how we're going to control a population of, I don't know what the population, millions. What's the population of North Korea? Can you even get that information? Yeah. Anyways, but to control a population into the millions, you have to have some kind of mechanism to control them.
Yeah.
And to make sure that they're not going to think thoughts outside of what you want them to think. Like, takes a whole shitload of work to do.
So
like it's,
the estimate in 2022 is not quite 26 million.
Yeah. So just a little bit smaller than Canada.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, it's 26 millions of people. You know, to keep them all under control like that, that takes a
lot.
Yep. Not stupid.
They convert to Christianity, or they just, do whatever, go through the motions, do whatever they need to do to prove to these people.
Person that got stuck in the sand in the sand,
Yes,
in the desert,
in the desert, but with
was
Islam.
Was it in Egypt?
Exactly.
I can't remember exactly what country it was.
I can't remember what country it was either.
But anyways, yeah, I was like, oh, well, we'll convert because
We'll convert.
sure, you know.
Yeah. If you're gonna treat me better, I'll say whatever you want.
Say whatever you want me to say. Yeah. Or I'll say whatever you want me to say.
Yeah. She gives us some interesting stats about how many people escape through Mongolia. So, I mean, read the book because the stats are kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have to cross from North China into Mongolia, and it's like dead of winter. They have like, obviously, like they're poor. They don't have any good clothing. There's a baby with them, because it's a big group of them that are going across, and so they're trying to they're told like what they're supposed to see, and it's in the dead of night. They're trying to navigate by the stars to get across, and it's like winter, full on freezing winter Mongolia. Northern China, trying to get through, and so they have to go through these different fences, and they have to watch out for guards that are patrolling the area. And finally she has like I forget what it was she had with her, but she was like, they're not taking me alive. Like if the Chinese people come, they're not taking me alive, because I'm not going back to North Korea. Like I'll kill myself basically if we get caught.
There's the choice. I was
saying.
Exactly.
So they get into Mongolia. Okay, they're kept in like a little kind of refugee, I guess, kind of camp almost, and then they're flown to South Korea. This is in 2009.
Okay.
So once they're in South Korea, they're taken to, because they have like, it's crazy that they have to have like an actual protocol and like policies for people that have escaped from North Korea. So they have like a full-on re-education camp for these people.
South Korea does. Okay.
And so what's interesting is they question them. They keep them in this camp or area for like months.
Yeah.
They need to make sure that they're not spies. So they're questioned and questioned and questioned for months and months and months in this place, so that they know, okay, yeah, we can release them like
into our population,
and they're not spies basically. And so not only that though, like they have to teach them about like basic things, like what like an ATM is, and like what money is, like all of these like concepts that they have just like no clue about.
Yeah, well, she knows at this point what money is, because she's been working.
Yeah.
I mean, herself anyways.
Yeah, so I think she was...
Okay, so then they're sympathetic then, South Korea, in terms of trying to actually help North Koreans that have defected then.
Well, they are and they aren't.
The government or the individuals? Because those are two different things as well too.
So she eventually, this is fast forwarding a little bit, she eventually is approached by an educational broadcasting system, and they want to make a program and talk to North Korean escapees so that they can so that it can help the South Koreans understand what life is like there, and how bad it really is, and and so to basically treat the North Korean people nicer, right? Because they can tell by your accent. She talks a lot about trying to lose her North Korean accent. They can tell that you're from North Korea, and they treat you pretty badly. Like it's not very nice, some of the stuff she had to go through. So they eventually...
Well, it's better than what she went through in China, you know. Rather have a few people call me names than yeah.
She eventually, they let her and her mom go, and they get an apartment. They give them like actually like I think it's like $25,000 like each person.
US?
Yeah.
Wow.
To like restart their life, because they have nothing, right? They come, they have nothing.
That's not an insignificant amount of money.
No, and so it helps them start off. They get an apartment together, and she starts going to school. So she's 15 at this time, but she's only at a grade 2 level.
No, of course.
For everything, because
there's probably no education. There, because you did say
went to school. They go to school.
But do they have to work at school, or said they have to work after?
They have to work, but then you also have to like, you have to pay for stuff.
All right.
To pay for stuff.
And they're probably just learning a bunch of propaganda anyways.
Well, that's all. When she's even saying, this is like the weirdest thing when she started going to school in South Korea, because like everything, you can't just say Americans in North Korea. It's American bastards. That's how they...
They don't like Americans?
No. Well, of course not, right? Because they're the ones that came in with the Korean War, and that's what broke apart. It was the Russians versus the Americans. It was a proxy war, basically.
Right.
Between Russia and America.
But that was also... But that's when Korea split. So again, I don't know the history of how it split. I don't know
it super well either.
Because the Americans were kind of helping the South Korean on their side.
100%
so, but they still don't.
I think there's still a force of Americans in South Korea. To be honest, like
probably America's got forces all over the place. Well, not everywhere, but yeah.
So, but the one thing she was saying is like she was used to when they're doing math. If you kill one American bastard and one American bastard is left. How many American bastards do you have left or whatever? Like
330
yes.
million.
So, but like that's how they do math there.
Yeah.
So that was like a big change for her in school. Not only that, but like she had to be like completely deprogrammed. So even though she had been in China, this was like 2 years later when they got out, it's still all this indoctrination of figuring out like, oh, the dear leader can't read your mind and he's not immortal. And like all of these things eventually have to, she goes through it really well in the book about all these like things that had to be deprogrammed.
And how long did it take for her to?
It took a couple years.
I think I remember her. I've seen a video of her where she's talking about, like how North Koreans, look at other people in terms of like attractiveness. Oh. So it's like North Korea. So I don't know. Maybe she didn't talk about this book. So she's talking about like women find, like I guess maybe shorter, fatter men attractive because they look like
they're healthy.
Kim Jong.
Oh, Kim Jong. Yeah.
So like if you find like a fat guy, that's like what you think is the most attractive because that's what he looks like. So it's really interesting how she was saying that that's kind of how the attractiveness of what women would find. The more you look like the supreme leader, then
the dear leader,
the more attractive you
can be. The other thing that's kind of crazy, I don't know if you've seen this, but Michael Malice shows it when he talks about North Korea. He shows a picture where when you go to a hair salon in North Korea, they have like pictures of the different, there's only like a handful of haircuts you can get.
Right.
And it's like
as a man anyways.
And as a woman too, right? Like, it's really unreal to me. Like it's really unreal. He has a book out called, it's like talking about North Korea. It's an older book, but I forget. It's called Dear Reader, not Dear Leader, but Dear Reader. And it's, I don't know. I want to read it. He's really hilarious, and I love Michael Malice. But anyway, so in 2 years, she's able to work her butt off, and she gets her GED. No one thinks she's going to be successful because South Korea education is so competitive. So anyone she had talked to in like the re-education camps about going to school, like they're like, oh, like you're not going to do well at all because it's so competitive here. But yeah, so she gets her GED in 2 years. That's
what I was always saying. Getting stuff like up to high school education is not actually, it's not that difficult. You just need to put in the work and the effort. Yeah.
She eventually wants to go to college. Her mom's life is getting better, but she ends up getting mixed up, or she is dating this guy who beats the shit out of her, basically, like really bad to the point where she's almost killed at one point, I think. And so it makes Yeonmi really interested in criminal justice.
Domestic violence is like, no matter where you go in the world, it's
there. Yeah. Her mom eventually like was able to get out of that situation, but it makes her really interested in like criminal justice and wanting to kind of be like maybe like a police officer, detective or something like that. So she eventually is able to get into this highly, highly competitive criminal justice program at like the best school in Korea for it. And it's like college, university, like a university. Yeah. So she eventually she's taking all the courses and she's like working her butt off. She eventually becomes like, high up in her class, like not top, but like
on the dean's honors list or something like that.
She's doing really, really well. And this is when these people at the educational broadcasting system, they get her name somehow and ask her if she can tell her story on South Korea. To South Koreans. The only reason she doesn't want anyone to know she's from North Korea. So like nobody in her class at college knew she was North Korean because she was able to fit in so well.
She got rid of her accent.
She got rid of her accent and everything. So she was hesitant to go on. However, they still don't know where her sister is. So, and that's all they want is to find her sister and figure out if she's in China, a way to bring her into South Korea. So that's why she does it, hoping that her sister will see this in China and see them and then try and find
assuming she's still in China and not brought back. Exactly. She could be anywhere. She could be anywhere in the world.
Exactly. They tried so many different things to try and find her sister. Like even like when they were in China trying to find her, they couldn't find her.
Yeah.
So, so she goes on these shows, nothing happens. She continues to go through college, and she kind of, to improve her English, she hooks up with some different like kind of Christian groups that help with language. She eventually goes over as a missionary to the United States. She goes over as a missionary to learn better English and everything. And so
she probably has a whole other culture shock even from going from South Korea to America. She's like, holy shit.
And she goes to Texas. That's where she lives. Yeah. So she does that. She's in Texas for a while, kind of learning how to be a missionary. And then they go, I think it's to Costa Rica. Actually, they go and they help build some schools or something there. And then she goes and stays with another kind of like host family somewhere on like the east coast of the United States.
And does she go there because of through school?
No,
or is this like after she's done her school? Or
no, she's still doing school at this time. I think it's like on a school break, and her main thing is she just wants to improve her English, right?
Okay.
And so when she's with this host family at Thanksgiving and the American Thanksgiving, that.
Oh my God, what's with all this food?
I know.
And like, why are you like, this is insane.
So it's at that point her mom calls her when she's there and says, "Found your sister."
Oh.
So she immediately is like, drops everything and flies back. Right. And she doesn't talk too much about her sister. She's like, my sister has her own story that she has to decide whether she's going to tell it or not. And, but unfortunately, her sister never saw any of those. And there was like a ton of broadcasts that Yeonmi had done. She never had seen any of them.
So how'd they find her?
She just escaped on her own through Southeast Asia. And what happened was when she was at the re-education camp, they figured out that she was relatives or daughter of Yeonmi and her mom. And so it expedited her movement through the re-education camp because they're like, oh yeah, you're not a spy. Like we already vetted your mom and your sister. So that's how it was a bit faster for her.
You could still be a spy though.
You could, but I guess it was just a faster process for her. So eventually she's asked to give talks about what happened to her. I'm not sure why they picked her specifically out of all the different North Korean defectors to kind of be almost like the spokesperson. I think because she's quite pretty and she's probably a really good talker in Korean, or a good speaker. Good talker.
Talk good.
So, and then she co-authored like an op-ed in the Washington Post. And so now she's on North Korea's radar and she's on she's getting death threats for them.
Yeah,
exactly.
How many assassinations does North Korea actually do?
I don't know.
You know what I mean?
I don't know. So then this is she's getting these threats and it's like, they're still trying to control me. She's like, they're still trying to control me. I'm not even in the country anymore. And they're still trying to control me.
Of course.
And so she's determined to well,
China does the same thing. Yeah, if there's any defectors that are talking bad about the Chinese Communist Party or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So she's determined not to be controlled and to speak out for the people that can't speak out for themselves. And so what's interesting, though, is up until this point, she's never told her full story. She's always left out that human trafficking piece of it because she felt ashamed, which you shouldn't. That's not your fault. But she never shared that part. It was only when she kind of finally gave a speech in Ireland, she was asked to speak. This was in 2014 at the One Young World Summit. And so it's a summit that gathers young people from around the world to develop solutions to global problems, apparently. And so it was in Ireland. And so this is when she told her full story. And then people were like, you need to write a book. And so that's how this book came to be, is when she wrote it. And she was only 21 when she wrote this book. And this book was published back in 2015. So
right. Well, she's still young. She's still in her 20s now. She's late 20s. She was born in 97, right?
93. So
93.
She's 29.
Yep.
So that's where her story ends in the book. But
I mean, her life is just getting going.
Yes. And so she eventually went to New York and went to Columbia University. I don't know that she finished, but because if you listen to her, especially, I mean, she's been on Rogan, she's been on what's his name, Lex Friedman, and she's been on Jordan Peterson. The Jordan Peterson, I've listened to all of them. The Jordan Peterson is the best. I was in tears afterwards. He was in tears. They were all crying. It's so stunning. And she talks about the parallels she sees with cancel culture and the woke mob with what's happening in North Korea. And that's another reason why she's speaking out more now, because she sees the dangers and the horrific conditions of what happened in North Korea, and she sees it happening now
in Canada and the United States.
And so her discussion about this with Jordan Peterson, because he's
Well, that's what he's been warning us
He's
for
been
a
warning us
long
for
time.
a long time. So it's one of the best podcasts. It's one that will always kind of stick with me. It was good.
I should listen to that.
I would. It's really
I do
good.
have some questions. I don't know if you, but is there anything else that you want to talk about in terms of the
I think
book
that's
or whatever?
it. So that's about it. So she, I think she lives in Chicago, I want to say now, and she has a son. And she has a YouTube channel where she talks about different things in North Korea to help people
probably
understand.
seen some of her videos.
Yeah, of course. And then she has another book. I don't know if it's out yet or coming out, but it's called While Time Remains, a North Korean defector's search for freedom in America. So that one would be really interesting to read as well, to hear what her...
It's interesting that she's in Chicago, because Chicago is
I don't know.
not a safe city.
She was actually, I don't know if you heard this story about her. She was walking with her son in downtown Chicago during some of the Black Lives Matter. I'm calling them riots.
Well, they are riots. You don't need to. That's exactly what they were.
And she was assaulted by a group of black women. She had her son with her, and it was all filmed. It was awful, and she's like, "What the fuck?
Yeah,
like, what is happening?"
I don't know if I've ever talked about on this podcast. I mean, those guys. It's a BLM. They're, quite frankly, they're a terrorist organization.
Yep.
In terms of the money that they've laundered, or not laundered, I should say, scammed out of people. And they just go around burning buildings, killing black people, breaking their businesses. Like it's unbelievable. Anyways, I don't.
I just looked it up. So her book is coming out February 14th, 2023. And it says she sounds the alarm on the culture wars, identity politics, and the authoritarian tendencies tearing America apart. So it'd be really interesting to read.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting. Yeah. So I have a question, and maybe they talked about it with Jordan Peterson or not, because a lot of it has to do with Canadian politics. And for me, I guess I hate politics. I hate all the political parties. I think they're all
snakes.
Yeah, it's just everyone play the political game. So I don't care about that. What I just care about is, number one, just get out of people's way and let people live their own life. Have, I guess, small government, right? The minimal you need to just keep the basic services going, plow the roads, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And just get out of the way. Stop trying to impose more and more and get more and more power. Like, I don't want any organization to consolidate and have more power. So when she was talking to Jordan Peterson, what did they say? Or did they say anything about Canada in terms of like what they're seeing now with, like, did they talk about the Freedom Convoy and things that happened there?
This was before the Freedom Convoy.
Okay. Because my question would be, like, there's a lot of people that say, our government invoked the Emergencies Act, whatever, whether you believe it or not, or whatever, like, people's Charter of Rights and Freedoms were breached, We can have that debate if you don't disagree with that, but that's pretty much what I mean. They're freezing people's bank accounts, no due process, beating your own citizens. So why is it that so many people, when you see these things kind of inching towards a government having more and more power and taking less and less, or taking more and more from citizens so that they have less and less, why are people so willing to give that up and allow them to have that? I think it's because they're like, oh, well, the government is cracking down on people that I disagree with politically, so therefore it's okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, is that why people are like okay with it? Because I see, like, whether you agree with the protests or not or whatever, like, I think you should agree that citizens should have the right to protest peacefully and within the confines of the law, regardless of what they believe in, and you should let them do that. But yet people are like, no, well, they need to crack down because I don't believe in why they're protesting. Do you know what I mean?
So what I would say about this is, number one, read Coddling of the American Mind, because they go through, and I'm reading it with the kids right now, but they're going through kind of 7 main reasons of why this kind of thing is happening. And one reason is the extreme polarization that has happened between the left and the right. And so now, like, we're tribal people, like that, like humans are tribal. And so you find your tribe and it's that us versus them mentality. And I think it just feeds into that, right? You want your side to win. And I don't think people are really understanding the consequences or the future of what this means, that the Emergencies Act was invoked for something that was a peaceful protest.
No.
and what that means
Right.
further on, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, because you see what happened now in Ontario,
yes.
and it's like, oh well, we're just gonna like, nope, you can't
You can't
even
can't
protest
strike.
or strike, whatever, right?
No, so exactly. And it's like you think
Right, like that's not right.
they're
It's
going to come
all
for
not.
you.
It's all not right.
They're going to come for you. Eventually, it'll be something that's important to you that they'll come for.
Yeah.
And we're the people that have been standing up saying, look, they're coming for you. And
Yeah.
part of this is also, it's that concept creep where you, well, if your words make me feel upset, well, that's violence. And so it's that creep
Right.
of a definition.
It's so funny because if you've been watching any of the footage of the inquiry,
Yeah.
the Rouleau Commission for the invocation of the Emergencies Act, you heard the police. Was it Police Chief Bell
I
or
don't
whatever?
know.
He was talking and testifying about perceived violence. I can't remember specific. I know words are very important here and how they.
Yes.
But he said because he was testifying, saying that a lot of people felt they perceived violence or they felt violence or that it could lead towards violence. And then the lawyer was saying, so you're not actually talking about violence that happened as defined in the criminal code. And then he had to say no, but people had this perception of violence, right? So like, I'm going into a situation where I perceive that something bad could happen. So I'm actually experiencing violence. It's like, well, no, you're not. So
Yep.
you're already seeing it right now.
Yes.
High officials talking in this language that is completely negating what the word means, right? Using the word violence
Yes.
and just completely the wrong context, right? And just
Well,
trying to misconstrue
and
it.
it's this culture of safetyism, right? That's what we're in now. We're overprotecting our kids, and so then again, this creeps into when these kids then go to university, and then when they get jobs. So we're not letting them slide down a very small hill in the wintertime because we don't want them to get hurt. So now they think every small thing is going to hurt them. So instead of preparing them to be anti-fragile, we're trying to put them in a bubble, and it makes them not resilient.
But so do you think that trying to tie this back into the actual book that we're reading, do you think that, and I don't know if she's saying this, like this type of behavior that we're having and this type of way that we're educating our kids and raising our kids, is this going to lead them to look outside themselves for that guidance and structure and say like, well, I actually need the government to take care of me? Yeah, it is a good idea to have all these programs put in place because I can't do it or people can't take care of themselves. So they need the government to do it.
So
and then that's how you instill more and more government control until all of a sudden you went from democratic socialism, whatever, to like full blown communism or whatever.
She doesn't talk about this in the book because the book is her story of escape, right?
Right.
So maybe in the next book she will. But the point is, though, with that 100%, because now you have safe spaces in universities. You need the university to provide you. So which could, when you're that age, that might as well kind of be like the government. That's the next step once you leave university. They need to provide you with a trigger warning.
Right.
You read a book that...
Or the government will have to impose some kind of thing on corporations or companies. They're like, well, you need to provide this for your employees because that's part of the I don't know what the governing thing is, the labor board or whatever, the human,
whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But so it's interesting. It was a good book. Her story's like unfreaking real.
Yeah.
You can't even believe someone has lived through this.
And that's, I guess, bringing it back is like, it's, I mean, I don't even know what to say and what to think because it's like, it's so horrific. And and like, how do you solve it? I have no idea. How do you help other people? I guess just by speaking about it is one thing to get more awareness.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, say everyone in the world knows that this is going on in North Korea, but what is that going to matter if the North Koreans themselves don't even know? Because they're not getting anything.
I know. I know. You have to be able to empower them to rise up against it. I don't know.
Yeah. And how do you do that?
I know.
Quote unquote legally without sending in the SEALs or whatever to infiltrate and start spreading in disconsent, because that's meddling in foreign affairs, right? Like I'm totally against that kind of stuff. Like leave other countries alone, let them do their own thing. Like you can't just go in there and, hey, I'm Canada, United States. I'm just going to go in here because I know what's best for you.
I know.
Yeah. I don't know. These are, again, super complex solutions or problems that I can't even begin to understand how to solve them, or that I would even pretend that I would even know what to do. Because I don't. I mean, I think, of course, I think everything starts from within, and that you as an individual need to try to do what's right. But again, I can't, if I'm in North Korea and I've been born and raised, I'm not going to be thinking like I think now.
No.
You know what I mean? Because I haven't been grown up to think independently, or to have, reach for whatever it is your dreams. And if you work hard, you can achieve anything or whatever, like how many places have internet that they can just go around and go on the internet? Like, did they have, because you said they had a VHS, so they might have had like a TV then. So, but again, state media, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Internet? What about internet?
I don't know. Because that was 2007 when she left. So
yeah, the internet was invented in the 70s. So, but yeah, no, I know.
Yeah. So.
And even then, I'm sure whatever ISPs or whatever you're using to get the actual internet is just, everything is just firewalled out. Like, you can't access, can't go to Google, can't go wherever. You got to use only this search engine, which is only going to bring in stuff that is like state sanctioned, right?
Yeah, of course.
Which is very interesting about Bill C-11 in Canada, where it's like, oh, well, the government now is going to regulate, or they want the authority and the power to regulate what comes in to help provide Canadians to make they want the algorithm to decide what is the appropriate Canadian content based on what the government feels. Whether you like the government that's in power or not, what's going to happen when it switches to the other side? And then the other side's like, we have this legislation now. Now I don't want your message that you resonated with to come through. Now we're going to have our message come through. When you give government power, 100% they're going to abuse it. And it's not going to be, and maybe you like it because of what they do right now, because, I don't want to hear Donald Trump talking on the media. Yes, you should filter him out. But then the next guy comes in. Pierre comes in. He's like, now I don't want to have, I don't know, I don't want Justin Trudeau to be able to speak on these platforms. And like, you lose that control. And yeah, it's not good. Nope. Anyways, 1 to 5. We could talk about stuff like this all day, but
it was 1 to 10, I thought.
Yeah, sorry, 1 to 10.
So I'd give it an 8.
An 8?
An 8. It was. I mean, it's hard to read, right? It's
right.
Really,
well, it doesn't make it not good, but
no, of course not. I think my takeaway from it is she's very brave, and I think not just in telling her story, because she was telling her story there for a while, but I think
even just living through everything,
understanding that in order to help people and bring awareness, especially to human trafficking, she had to be authentic and tell her full story, because that is the reality of what she went through. And I think the other thing is, there's lots of books by North Korean defectors, but a lot of them are men, and they don't go through the same human trafficking situation that her and her mom and the women that go through do, especially because of China's one-child policy and all of these single men that are now looking for wives.
Well, but also you're not gonna, men aren't gonna defect or whatever, and you're not gonna be raping men. Women are. It's not as likely for a woman to rape a man just because of physical whatever realities, right?
So it wasn't just brave for her to tell her story, but then to come out and tell the full story of it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Sorry, can I ask you that question?
Yeah.
If you know. What happens when men defect?
I don't know.
Where do they go? Do they sold into more of a physical labor, slavery,
like that's
right? So I'm going to do that so that you're going to work on my farm, and you're going to
probably.
Yeah.
But I don't know because there's lots of books. My brother actually texted me a little while ago when I was reading this book. Actually, it was kind of ironic. He texted me a book that he was reading at the same time, and it was from a male North Korean guy's perspective. So
okay, well maybe we can find out where. Well, I mean, I have the internet, I can take a look and see what.
There's lots, and I think he's read a couple books now about North Korean defectors. So so that's kind of my takeaway. And just I think like how even though you have all this like opposition against you, you're on like death threat lists from North Korea. She's so determined to continue to speak out, and I think for those of us here in Canada, as we see what's happening. And we've experienced different things within the last couple of years, to be brave and to speak out or stick to our guns, regardless of the opposition. So it's very inspiring to me. Yeah. So.
Yeah, because, when people don't speak out or whatever, I mean, you get to that point where, you're self-censoring yourself. And that's kind of like everyone who's in there, like you're saying, oh, you don't whisper, or because there's eyes and ears everywhere.
Yes.
It's like, well, that's where it starts.
That's
so
where
if
it
you
starts.
just start not
and
speaking.
I think, and what's the saying? The only thing that needs to happen for evil to perpetuate is for good men to do nothing.
Right.
So I love that quote. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy.
I know.
Oh.
I know.
Anyways, yeah.
Yes.
All right.
All
There's nothing of, I can't ask you questions of like, is it something that you want to do?
I know. I was thinking about that. I was like, you can't. No, but I think it's like for us, it's like, you know, be authentic and not be afraid of speaking up when we feel like we need to speak up.
Right.
Especially to protect our kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And to live in a place, you know, where that align with our values, and that, 100%. You know, where that they can grow up in a place where we don't have to worry about them saying, you know, whether it's medical autonomy or whether it's they're allowed to learn and then say whatever it is that they want to. Exactly. And not live in a world where like, oh, well, you can't talk about this or can't talk about that. But because it's alarming. I mean, even, you see like full blown, highly credentialed doctors and medical professionals all over Canada just getting fired. Just for asking questions and just having an opinion on something, as if we can't have discussions now on things. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable what's going on. And even for me, it's like, anybody can just do whatever you want. I don't even care. I was like, why can't we have conversations? It's mind-boggling, the level of
words are violence now. That's what it is.
But it's more than that, though. But it's
yeah, I know. It's as a scientist, as a questioner, it's heartbreaking.
And that's what science is all about. It's just asking questions. It's like, oh, what did you get? Okay, all right. So this is what you're thinking. Okay, well, let's test it. Let's keep testing to make sure that it's right.
No.
And if it's wrong, you come up with new things.
I know.
And that's the whole point of.
I know. It's so heartbreaking.
It's just ask questions, and it's not even like they're harmful questions.
Just questions.
Yeah.
That's why people call you Whiskers. You're curious like a cat.
Always ask the questions. Anyways, up top.
Awesome.
There it is.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening and watching. I hope you enjoyed that. A little bit of a different take, I guess.
Yeah.
But again, someone super inspiring, super strong. You know, I think there's a lot of takeaways that people can have in terms of standing up for what you believe in and fighting really with your life in order to do better for yourself and get better for yourself, because a lot of people, they won't have that struggle or that fight to do better, right? Yep. So exactly. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So thank you for watching. Mm-hmm. Thank you for listening. Mm-hmm. Check us out, odumandandrea.com. Mm-hmm. And I think with that, we'll say enjoy your Remembrance Day. Yes. And
see you next week.
Sounds good.